What's good, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the third installment of What If Deku Was a Spy. If you haven't checked out the previous parts already, make sure to click the playlist up below to get into the first and second parts of this. That said, make sure to leave a like and hit that red subscribe button, and also turn on those post notifications so you guys don't miss on any part of the series. That said, I hope you guys are going to enjoy the video.
Hey Ross, sauce it up.
The battle would begin with Deku immediately yelling out the code word, and from behind, Momo would bust open the door and shoot her gun at Jiro, which hits her and sends her to the ground, taking her out immediately, as Kirishima would turn around to say, "What? No!" But from here, Deku would rush in saying, "Pay attention to me!" as he punches Kirishima with an uppercut, sending Kirishima flying back. And Kirishima from here would get back up, saying that was one hell of a blow, that he almost felt that one, as he would rush in and try to fight Deku hand to hand. But Deku would outclass him in every way, shape, and form, and Kirishima would be unable to land a single blow against Deku, with Deku changing his fighting style up every so often to make sure Kirishima doesn't find out what the pattern is. Deku would be using his multiple fighting styles to completely overcome Kirishima's hardening. Not only that, but he would also be using one of the knives that he has attached to his leg holster to fight Kirishima, with his other arm being metal, so he's able to actually attack him and land a little bit of damage every single time. Now, the goal that he's trying to get to is that since Kirishima isn't able to even attack back, Deku would seriously just be charging up his blow to finally be able to stun Kirishima long enough to use capture tape on him, and with his left hand, like I said, would be using a blade from his leg holster to keep Kirishima's attacks at bay, and to apply pressure on him, seeing as he can't hit him with his fist because, that would just be idiotic. That said, he would continue like this for about a minute until Kirishima would send Deku flying back with a blow, as he would finally land an attack, and Deku would land pretending to get up slowly as if he was hurt. During this time, Kirishima would use this moment of weakness to rush in at Deku, as Deku would say, "Checkmate!" as he would shock Kirishima and wrap capture tape around him immediately, catching the dub. From here, All Might would praise Izuku and Momo for their impressive performance, and after this, Deku would tell Momo she did a great job, as from here, he'd go on to observe the rest of the matches, with everybody being like, "Whoa, I didn't know you were this impressive." The class would be shocked at Deku's performance, seeing as he is quirkless, and he's doing all of this amazing stuff without a quirk. This would begin to change some of the students' perspectives on quirkless people, and it would make them believe that maybe they do have a chance of becoming pro heroes just like them. This would prompt a bunch of them to think that if a quirkless kid is catching up this fast, maybe that just means that they have to step up their game. And a bunch of them would agree. From here, this is when, like I said, he would go on to observe the matches, with him going home at the end of the day to his assigned home with fake parents, as to make it seem as if he has a normal life. That said, he would then write down more info, and from here, about 1 week of Deku getting to know his classmates would go by, with him creating detailed assessments on each one of them, and reporting them to the Hero Commission, starting with Yugo Aoyama. His classification would be strange, weirdo, he likes to stand out, and he, as of now, doesn't have anything to stand out. Mina Ashido, she seems to be an outgoing girl with a very interesting acidic quirk, and she doesn't seem to be in any potentiality to be the traitor. Next, we have Tsuyu Asui. She's a frog girl, quite timid. She's also outgoing at the same time, and she does not seem to be the traitor. Tenya Ida, Clash rep. He is a little bit of a stick in the mud, and he is not exactly the kind of guy he would expect to be the traitor. Ochako Uraraka. She has an insanely powerful gravity quirk that with training could become very deadly later on, and she has a bubbly personality. Next, Ojiro. Tail, quirk. Very basic. Deku doesn't see him as a potential traitor, seeing as his quirk doesn't really seem as if it could help him with that. Next, Denki Kaminari. Now, Kaminari's profile would be a little strange because Kaminari's personality would be a little bit difficult for Deku to wrap his hand around, seeing as he hasn't had quite as much detail on him. However, he would say that he has a lightning quirk and that Denki Kaminari is an outgoing person. Eijiro Kirishima. He would give his profile as that manly character, I guess you could say, with a outgoing personality and an extroverted nature. Kyoji Koda. He would say that he's an introverted person with a pretty powerful and unique quirk that with training could potentially go on to be a very powerful quirk. Then we have Sato, the man who eats sugar for his power. Deku thinks that he's not even in contention to be one of the traitors. And next we have Shoji, the man who can turn parts of his bodies into other extensions and limbs. Deku would say that his quirk is pretty interesting but nothing noteworthy. Next, Jiro. Deku's profile of her would be that she definitely needs a lot more in terms of like experience to grow. She seems to be more of an introverted person in nature, and she is utterly just kind of bland. Next, we have Sato, or Sero, sorry. He would say that his personality is pretty much extroverted, that he doesn't seem to see any red flags within himself. Next would be Tokiyami, with Deku saying that he seems to be interesting, seeing as he has somewhat of a villainous quirk. However, it seems as if his intentions are pure. Next, Shoto Todoroki, the son of Endeavor, with quirk, name, half hot, half cold. He would pretty much put him in the ranks of being a very powerful person, but holds himself back with his quote-unquote daddy issues. Next, Toru Hagakure. He would say that she's definitely a potential to be the UA traitor, seeing as her quirk in nature could let her do so many things to be a perfect traitor. After that, he would say Katsuki Bakugo. Is he the traitor? Deku would say unknown, but he would say that he used to know him as a kid, saying that Bakugo has a very extroverted personality and a god complex at that. Next would be Momo Yaoyorozu. He would say easy on the eyes, it lacks confidence, and she's a little bit of a mix between extroverted and introverted, saying that she could go on to become a very valuable asset in the pro-hero society. After this, the commission would look at his report and say that he's doing well as of now, telling him to continue as he would leave, arriving home hours later to finally rest for the day. The next day, he would arrive in class with a signed permission slip from his quote-unquote parents, as they would make their way to the USJ, where the entire class would go on to meet 13, and she would go on to give her awfully boring speech. The class would be paying attention to 13 when suddenly out of nowhere a strange portal would appear in the middle of the USJ. Deku seeing this would look towards Aizawa, who would seem as if he's shocked, with Kirishima saying, "Whoa, nice, they have fake villains?" But Aizawa would seem not to think this when he would jump down and say, "The run, those are not fake villains." As from here, everybody would proceed to kind of try to like be on guard, but it's too late. It's at this moment that Bakugo and Kirishima would jump in, but they would not be able to hit Kurogiri. And from here, Kurogiri would teleport the entire school to a different location in the USJ. Now, the locations would be basically the same ones that they were in canon, and once Deku sees this, he would realize that, yep, villains are definitely here. He would try to swim out of the water and would end up actually getting caught off guard by a villain that would hit him away underwater. Deku would be mid-fight when out of nowhere Tsuyu would wrap her tongue around him, shooting him up onto the boat as she would jump up in there with nobody else in hand, because keep in mind, Mineta isn't part of the story this time. And so this is when Deku would pretty much ask Tsuyu, why she's here. Like she should not be there at all, seeing as she's a water quirk user. And so he would deduce that the villains have no idea what their quirks are, that they kind of just sporadically spread them around, trying to catch them all off guard. And so Deku would proceed to tell her that the best course of action from here would be to steer the boat away from the water, where they'll have the advantage, as Deku would steer the boat towards the shore and villains would begin running towards their direction. This is when Tsuyu would jump off the boat, and as of this moment, villains would begin rushing them. But as this happens, Aizawa, who would be nearby, would jump in saying that they need to go now, with Tsuyu and Mineta going, but Deku staying, getting into more fighting. Oh, and by the way, I know I said Tsuyu and Mineta, but keep in mind, Mineta's expelled. It's just a habit. Anyways, though, that said, he would stay into his fighting position, and out of nowhere would jump in Aizawa as he has his erasure quirk activated, And from here, using Aizawa's fighting skills as well as Erasure Quirk with Deku's tenacity, talent, strength, and just ability to fight multiple targets at once, would begin to dismantle tons of villains alongside Aizawa, as Deku was able to fight perfectly alongside Aizawa as if he'd known him his entire life. And this is when Shigaraki would be triggered, as Deku and Aizawa would be getting done with the last of the villains. You would hear Shigaraki in the background saying, "Nomu, kill him!" And suddenly, a strange giant creature would appear out of nowhere, as it would roar to the heavens, before rushing in at Aizawa's direction, hitting him directly in the ribs, sending him flying. Deku, upon seeing this, would realize that he needs to get out of the way now. He would jump in front of one of the last remaining villains, as he would jump over him, using his acrobatic skills to get over him, as the Nomu sends the villain flying back with a punch, roaring at the direction of Deku. But Deku would look at the villain, or the Nomu, as he would decide that he has no idea how to take this guy out. He would rush in and throw a punch and a kick at the Nomu, with Deku being shocked at how powerful this thing is. It's so strong. Deku's hits didn't even budge it. Deku would realize this, and that without a quirk, he's probably going to stand no chance. So he needs more equipment, but he doesn't have any. So he would proceed to jump back and try to dodge as many of the Nomu's attacks, but its speed, tenacity, strength, its sheer grit fighting against Deku would be so much that Deku would have such a hard time overcoming this. Deku would jump, dodge, he would sweep under, try to kick the Nomu, try to go for any weak points that Deku could sense, but nothing would work. And suddenly, Aizawa would get back up as he uses his Erasure Quirk, and the Nomu suddenly doesn't seem that powerful. His healing properties begin to go away. However, they couldn't notice this because they haven't damaged the Nomu. It's at this moment where Shigaraki would begin laughing, saying, "The Nomu will not be defeated by somebody like you. It was made to kill All Might," revealing to Deku and Aizawa the quirks that the Nomu has. As Deku would say, "Regeneration and shock absorption, eh? Sounds interesting. I didn't hear him mention super strength. I guess that might just be how strong this thing is." He would jump back as he jumps into the air, and using his metal arm with his nanotech weapon code Diamond would punch down as he would hit the brain of the Nomu. But the Nomu would seem as if it wasn't even shocked, as it would grab Deku by the arm and it would slam him onto the ground, with Deku coughing out blood, being like But this is when, out of nowhere, Aizawa would jump in and shoot a scarf at the Nomu's arm, stopping the Nomu from landing an even more attacks on Deku. This would give Deku just enough time to get back up, as he would rush in before the Nomu was able to hit Aizawa, and it would just be this cycle of Aizawa trying to defend Deku and Deku trying to defend Aizawa, as they're both trying to hold the Nomu off for as long as possible, trying to think of any ways at all to deal with the Nomus. But as it would seem, hope was getting lower and lower, because they realized that they can't take him out. Regardless, once hope is almost lost, All Might would show up with a smile on his face and rage in his face as soon as he sees everything, as he would go on to solo the Nomu, just like he does in canon. And from here, this is when the group would finally be able to recoup, and Deku and Aizawa would go off somewhere to try to take out more villains. From here, with the Nomu being defeated, Shigaraki and Kurogiri would end up retreating, and everybody would meet outside alongside a bunch of police officers who would ask them where they were and to confirm stories with each other, finding out about Aoyama, specifically saying that the place that he was at was a secret. Deku, after hearing this, would say, "Come on, Aoyama, you can't expect us to just believe anything, right? Where were you?" But Aoyama would be like, "I was over here being beautiful," trying to dodge the question as much as possible, saying that it's a secret. But suddenly, he would hear Invisible Girl's story about how she was near Todoroki. But Todoroki would be shocked because he didn't remember her being anywhere near, saying that he probably could have frozen her on that landslide. And from here, he would also begin to question Todoroki to find out that, he didn't know she was even there. He would also find out about Kaminari and think that he could be a potential suspect as well, since his quirk could potentially be used to jam signals, seeing as it is lightning or electricity. And after, he would create a new list of potential suspects, saying the others appear to be fine. However, 3 suspects appear as the major people who could potentially be Kaminari, Invisible Girl, and Aoyami. That said, from here, the students would be given an entire week off of school, which Deku would use to train and also request new gear and some upgrades to his new suit, like adding new features to his mask to let him breathe underwater and in smoke, if the occasion was to ever present itself, also requesting it to be more lightweight since his movements were slowed down when he was fighting against the Nomu, something that he noticed early on as soon as he put the suit on. And since he knows the sports festival was going to be coming soon, he would request to use his support items in it since it would help him greatly. So yeah, class would eventually start up in about 1 week. And from here, Deku would have also informed the Hero Commission that he needs explosive type weapons with his suit. Powerful ones at that, because fighting against Nomu made him realize that he's not always going to be having an easy way out, and that he needs to think of new ways to fight against villains such as, powerful ones that are just so insanely focused on brute force that it's just impossible to basically defeat them or do any damage to them whatsoever. That said, as I was saying, class would start and the class would be informed of the UA Sports Festival, with classes 1B and all of the rest trying to go scope out the competition. Uraraka, just like usual, would begin getting extremely hyped up saying, "I'm ready! Are you ready?" But I digress. That said, Deku would pretty much end up paying close attention to his suspects, involving himself with Kaminari and Kirishima's friend group since he's a potential suspect. And the UA Sports Festival would finally be around the corner, with Deku being the person to give a speech instead of Bakugo since he was the one who actually got the most points in the entrance exam, seeing as he had a total of 42 plus 60 rescue points. So that's what would happen. Deku would go forward to give an amazing speech with the crowd cheering and also letting them know that he's quirkless. The crowd upon hearing this would actually go silent, but Deku would then tell everybody to try their best and the crowd would then be happy and cheer, with a little bit of muttering in the crowd thinking, there's no way they're gonna let that quirkless kid go, right? What if he gets hurt? But then this is when Midnight would go up, taking the microphone from Deku, hyping the crowd up once again and telling them all that the first event will be a obstacle course or a race. As everybody would begin getting suited up in their outfits, this is when everybody would be getting on the starting lineup. As just like usual, Todoroki would freeze the lineup as soon as the whistle would be blown, and Deku would jump knowing that this was going to definitely happen. Deku at this point would proceed to take the technology from his arm and it would begin shifting down to his body. The nanotech would begin going down his body and sliding to the bottom of his feet. Deku would begin using his nanotech to pretty much charge up heat at the bottom of his soles that would pretty much melt the ice every time that he would step, so Deku would run and not be bothered by the ice. Matter of fact, instead of melting the ice, let's say that Deku just creates like some shoes that are actually able to walk on ice, and so Deku is able to rush across the ice no problem, with everybody else being thrown off guard and Bakugo flying in the air using his explosions to pretty much get ahead of the competition. That said, this is when the race would continue going on, as Deku would meet his first couple of obstacles, the 0 pointers. Deku would look up as he would see these monstrosities, but Deku would know that he simply needs to calm down and go at this thinking of everything that could possibly happen. Seeing as there's 3 0 pointers this time and they're all ready to attack, Deku would rush in at one, the one in the middle, as he would use his magnetized glove quirk once more to pretty much grab onto the 0 pointer, causing it to shut down mid punch, as Deku was able to blow right past it, and using his enhanced speed by being a superhuman, would begin catching up slowly to Todoroki and Bakugo, who were way ahead of the competition. But at this point, Deku would end up making his way towards an obstacle course with a bunch of holes on the ground, and it seems very, very difficult to get across. However, Deku would start using his parkour abilities to jump from one edge to another as quickly as possible, when eventually he would end up getting to the landmine section, and once Deku sees this, he would decide that that's perfect. He would absorb one of the landmines into his nanotech, wasting a little bit of time, but then he would decide that a good idea would be the same one that Izuku would have made in the original. Grabbing a piece of a robot part, he would end up actually taking it as he begins to stack a bunch of bombs on each other, and he would blow himself to the front of the finish line, as this time, instead of actually being able to surpass Bakugo and Todoroki, he would make it past he would end up, instead of like using their shoulders to jump off, he would pretty much land a little bit behind them, using a little less explosions than in the original. And after landing, he would pretty much spin on the floor as he rolls to his feet and then begins running towards the direction of Todoroki and Bakugo. However, Todoroki would freeze the ground, saying, "Stay back, quirkless kid," quirkless runt. As you know, from here, Bakugo would say, "Yeah, you pest," as he would be shooting his explosions, but ultimately, Todoroki would be the winner of the race. And from here, it would be announced that the cavalry battle is going to be the next event. And so, from here, Deku not being in first place would actually have a huge amount of people who he could actually pick from when it comes to his squad. And so, what he would end up doing is picking his squad, with Deku, while this is all happening, being told by Bakugo not to get too ahead of himself. After, getting second place and telling him that he's still quirkless at the end of the day, and that even if he came at third place, that was luck. He would say it's fine, and by he, I mean Deku, but would be thinking that Bakugo definitely grew up to be a prick later on in life. But it's whatever. That said, he would go on to participate in the squad thingy, whatever, and from here, his team would be comprised of Kaminari, Momo Yaoyorozu, and Ochako Uraraka. Like for part 4!